Recording in progress.
Hello, welcome back to the Teaching Assistant Level 3 Award in Supporting Teaching and Learning in Schools course. It's lesson 2. I'm Vicky. Nice to have you here with me. And lesson 2 is about schools as organisations. So let's dive right in to looking at how schools and colleges work in the UK. And again, we'll go through assignment 2 at the end. So we'll gain an understanding of how schools are organised, including structures, roles, responsibilities, and policies. So in the UK, you may or may not be aware that there are these 5 stages: early years, primary, secondary, further education, FE, and higher education, HE. So everybody up till 18 needs to be involved up until the further education and needs to be doing something within that, whether it's an apprenticeship or a different kind of course or standard A levels. Not everybody obviously goes on to higher education. And the ages and key stages, again, you might be an expert in this, in which case, great. But if you're not sure, it can be quite confusing. Here they are. So the early years foundation stage, nursery and reception, you've got key stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So end of key stage 2 is end of primary school, and year 7 is the start of secondary school. Okay, so what points are the children tested nationally? So you may know that in year 2, at the end of Key Stage 1, there used to be SATs, which were externally marked. That thankfully has gone. And now there are just optional teacher assessments. So some schools don't use them, some schools use them just as a guide for them and some more information to give to year 3 teachers, but they don't have to. There are other assessments like the year 1 phonics check. That is a national assessment. Um, Key stage 2, you've got in year 4, actually, you've got the times tables test, which is again is a national check at the moment. We'll see how long that lasts. And at the end of year 6, there are end of key stage 2 tests. There's always a lot of talk about doing away with those every year, it seems, but it seems that they're still here. Key stage 3 just tends to be the school's in-house assessment. So when they start in year 7, they'll obviously use information from the SATs of year 6, but they'll also use CAT tests and other tests that will vary school to school. But you'll see commonalities between those. Um, and they will use that for information for setting, if that's appropriate at that school, and other kinds of grouping. And then GCSEs and some BTECs at the end of Key Stage 4 in year 11. So BTECs will be level 2 at that point. Um, and in some schools, they will offer more of those than others. It will just depend on the individual school. And then in year 13, there are so many different courses that they could be taking at that point. So it opens up slightly to the more sort of practical vocational courses and the more academic theoretical courses and the whole range there. So, are you aware of how the school hierarchy works? And at this point, I don't want to make it seem like you're at the bottom of a pile, because you certainly are not. You're an incredibly important asset in a school or a college, and they would be lost without you. And I say that as an ex-teacher, or absolutely lost without my teaching assistants. Um, but this is kind of what you're working with. So you've got an overarching local authority. You've obviously got some schools that are academies. They have a different structure. So they might be run by a trust. So that's going to be different school to school. But you will have some kind of governing body. You will have heads, executive heads, heads of school, whatever the name is. You will have deputies and assistants. The senior leadership team will vary how big the school is. You know, a tiny infant school might have 2 people on the senior leadership team, and a big secondary school or a college might have 20. It depends. Then you have either subject leaders for primary, department heads for secondary and college, and then you have subject teachers and support staff. Now, when we say what makes a successful leader, it really is true that everyone in a school is a successful leader of learning. And actually, if you walk around a school where they actually believe that, you have got midday supervisors who are modeling excellent leadership skills, behavior. So the playground behavior is better. It's getting that culture into the system, really. Um, so again, reflect on, do you think you're a good leader here? So do you communicate well with children, staff, parents? Are you organized? Do you manage your time well? Can you build positive relationships? Can you mediate and problem solve? Do you work well in a team? Do you respond to constructive feedback? Are you motivated, respectful, and fair? Do you reflect on your practice and adapt it? And do you manage your stress effectively? I think that final point is a very, very difficult one. And most leaders would say that's a challenge. Um, have a think here about the ones that you do well and maybe one or two that you'd like to work on, just for your own development, really. And feel free to pause the video to do that. So we'll go back to that slide in a second, as well as the top one, which you've just done, thinking about which ones you do well and which ones you need to do more of. How about thinking about a leader in your school? So somebody else who works in your school. So it can be a teacher that you work with, it could be the head, it could be someone at any stage. What do they do well on that list? And we'll pop back to it so you can have a think. And if you're feeling brave, you could think about what they need to work on too. You don't need to tell me about it, so it's fine. It's all confidential. Okay. Moving on then, in a school, you have got groups of stakeholders who are crucial in the smooth running of any school. So again, I'm going to ask you to pause the video and make some notes. Make a list of everyone you can think of who might be involved in the school from the local community, or the wider community. Okay, let's see what list you came up with. You might have other things on your list, but you can see there's quite a long list there. And these groups are all accountable to each other, but they're really hugely accountable to the children, young people, and families. So you may have some religious organizations in there. You may have some after school providers. You've certainly got parents. Um, and as you can see, it's in alphabetical order, so no one's more important than the others. Moving on from stakeholders to a curriculum in a school. So we've looked at how schools put together, who's involved in a school, and now looking at what actually happens in the content of the curriculum that's delivered. So there are 8 types. You've got the written documents that teachers use for planning, the curriculum that's taught, so the lessons that are happening, the supports, so the resources, and you will be one of those resources and a very crucial one. Assessed curriculum, so the way it's measured, the way children, young people are tested, but not only formal tests, but sort of questioning, picking up how they're doing. Do I need to adapt the planning? Recommended curriculum, so that is your top-down legislation that shows you what you have to do. The hidden is about implicit things in the teaching. So you've not only got to learn about Florence Nightingale, but you also have to be able to sit and listen, and you have to be able to take turns, and you have to be able to do some research and do some thinking and maybe put your hand up. And those are things that are on the hidden curriculum, those expectations we have of young people. Excluded items are things that just had to be left out. And the learned curriculum is what they hopefully leave with. How much do you know about the curriculum where you work? So something to do as you're thinking next time you're in your workplace. Um, are they following the national curriculum? Is it an exam specification depending on the age that you're working with? And are you familiar with the criteria of the curriculum? Because to support the children and young people effectively, you need to be really familiar with that. So just something to think about. And the key policies that are hugely important, safeguarding, which we'll be doing more on in another lesson, behaviour, whistleblowing, quality and diversity. Have a read of the staff handbook. That should be in place in any school or college. So ask for that if you haven't already been given that as part of your induction when you started, and see what you need to refresh your memory on because you may not have looked for a while. Okay, so assignment time. Something that would be very, very helpful for other teaching assistants to have would be a simple handbook. What do you need to know? And the headings are, and again, there's a template for this that you'll have in your pack: year groups, staff hierarchy and responsibility, governors, curriculum or curricula, key policies, and any relevant points from the staff handbook. So you're putting together a how to be a teaching assistant in school or college X. So that should be actually really worthwhile doing, and hopefully people could actually use it in the future. So good luck with that. And thank you very much for listening to lesson 2.